Unit School District 308, servicing communities of Aurora, Joliet, Montgomery, Oswego, Plainfield, and Yorkville. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Baumann.
Here.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Present.
Mr. McDowell.
Here.
Mr. Armstrong. Hall.
Here.
Watson. Higgins. Mr. Walsh.
Here. Pledge of allegiance, please. Dr. Wendt, recognitions, please.
At this time, Board of Education is happy to, once again, as we did a couple of weeks ago with, have my phone put this on as well? Well, I don't think it on my phone. The 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to bring Heather here and honor her as a finalist for Teacher of the Year for the state of Illinois. She, likewise, was one of several of our employees who will be honored later this month at the Those Who Excel Award Banquet. And tonight we have brought a number of other employees and important people to our district to be honored. And Dr. Judy Miner is going to facilitate the process. So, Judy?
Very good. We're really excited to honor the people here at the board meeting with regard to the amazing accomplishments that you've done. As far as protocols go, as your name is called and I read a little bit about the good work that you've done, if you would please come forward. Dr. Sparlin will present you with a recognition. Please be sure to shake everyone's hands, and then our board president, you'll have the opportunity to get a picture with him as well. So, if we're ready. So our first honoree is Gina Parks. This third grade teacher who works at Long Beach Elementary has been with the district for 18 years. She's responsible for organizing the grassroots organization Blessings in a Backpack and was able to raise over $18,000 in one night for this organization. She is being recognized with an award of recognition in the category of classroom teacher. Join with me in congratulating Ms. Gina Parks. Our second recipient of the Those Excel Award is Ms. Uzma Rahman. She is a teaching assistant at Wolf's Crossing Elementary. She's been with Wolf's Crossing since it opened in 2005 and has been with the district for 9 years. She consistently shows students what character is by being patient, kind, responsible, caring, and an overall good citizen. Usma is being recognized for the Award of Excellence in the category of Educational Service Personnel. Please join me in honoring Usma Rahman. Our third award recipient, Ms. Tracy Zalud, is a second grade teacher at Churchill Elementary. She's currently in her 4th year of teaching with the district, and her previous year in the district was spent as a student teacher at Churchill for the beginning of the year, and then she took over for her cooperating teacher when that teacher had gone on maternity leave. Ms. Zalud builds a community of trust and respect that permeates throughout her classroom. She is receiving the Award of Merit in the category of Early Career Educator. Join with me in congratulating Ms. Tracy Zalud. Our next award recipients are from the Trauber Junior High School Response to Intervention team. Natasha St. Victor, who is a social worker for 12 years with the district. Erica Neville, a counselor for 9 years with the district. Lara Bilkin-Morissette, a social worker who's been here with the district for 9 years. And Janine Chikansky, a speech pathologist in 10 years for the district. Also recognized are Brian Foleli, counselor for 9 years who is unable to attend, as well as Deborah Gomez, a psychologist who's been with the district for 7 years and unable to attend. The main outcome of this group of individuals is to see to it that students get the support they need. Their responsive service goes above and beyond when it comes to determining what students and their family need for ongoing support. They are receiving the Award of Merit in the category of Team. Congratulations. One other person to be recognized who is unable to attend tonight is Ms. Rhonda Anala from Mutual Ground. She is the education coordinator for Mutual Ground and has worked with the school district for many years, providing free programs on sexual abuse awareness in our elementary, junior high, and high schools. Rhonda has been empowering students to know that they own their bodies and teach safety responses that are age appropriate. Rhonda has been acknowledged for the award of recognition in the category of team as well. And finally, Heather Krause, whom you might have met if you tuned in at the last board meeting. She is one of 12 teachers up for the Illinois Teacher of the Year. She is from our district, and she will find out on October 25th at the banquet for those who excel. Please join me in congratulating all of our winners.
Thank you. Move on to public comment. On behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Residents interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and present it to the secretary to the board. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name and address for public record, and provide your feedback. Please note that comments are limited to 5 minutes per person and that no discussion of personnel matters, including names or specific job titles or responses to questions, are permitted. The board does not participate in discussion during public comment. Follow-up to your questions or concerns will be addressed by administration through the contact information provided on the comment card. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Miriam Fisher for public comment, please.
Hi, I'm Miriam Fisher.
Yes, please.
I'm Miriam Fisher, and I actually sent this letter via email to Dr. Miner a week ago and hoped to keep it private. But I didn't get a response, so I thought I'd bring it today so that everyone could be aware of my concerns. So it starts like this. I'm a parent of a freshman student. She has had the unfortunate luck of having been born in the year 2000. It seems that there is no appropriate placement for her this year due to the fact that the district would like to move in the direction of getting students into as many general ed classes as possible. My daughter has an IEP that might not have been working completely. However, at least she was successful. By success, I mean that she was passing her classes. The reason I am addressing this concern with you today is that I was told that the reason for the class elimination was a choice made by the superintendent. I would like to know how we are going to fix this problem. I believe that we have been patient as we are already a quarter of the way into the school year. I know I'm not the only parent in this situation. My child was getting direct support for math, social studies, science, and language arts last year. As an 8th grader, at her IEP meeting, she was in a fortuitous position because everyone at the meeting was familiar with her. as a student as well as a child. The head of the special ed department at her school had her as a student as well as her case manager. That was very lucky for us. I was feeling pretty confident that her transitional IEP into high school was thorough and well thought out. What I hadn't realized was that she would be going from about 20 students in a direct instruction class size to a class size of about 33 students, in which the classroom would be co-taught by a special ed teacher that would not necessarily be highly qualified in that subject matter. I'm also concerned that we are calling these Gen Ed classes knowing that we have many more than 30% IEP students in these classrooms. That is, the mandate is 30%, and there's some classes with 60% IEP students. The options that have been given to me, I'm sure were given to all the other LD parents, was that the placement where they're currently at or ISP. I am confident that the material covered in the ISP curriculum for the subject of math, science, and social studies my daughter has already surpassed. This would not be the least restrictive environment for my daughter. I don't think that the plan to get rid of these direct instruction classes was well thought out. The teachers, the aides, and even the administrators are working diligently to accommodate her needs. I know this. In truth, I don't believe that these needs will be met until those classes are brought back. If we told all the 8th grade parents that there was simply not enough money for their 9th grade curriculum and that their child would have to start in the 10th grade curriculum level, do you think that the response would be accepting? In essence, that's exactly what's been said to my child. She went from a program that was in existence for her level to deleting that level altogether at the high school. This is not acceptable. Again, I'm asking, what are we as a district going to do to fix this problem? Not just for my child, but for all the LD students with no longer have this program available to them. I'm eager to hear from you, to hear your response so that we are able to move forward with the fix to this gaping hole in our curriculum. Thank you for your time, Miriam Fisher. That was the end of my letter that I had addressed, and I still, like I said, was trying to keep it private, but since I had no response, I thought I'd bring it today.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Hope Fisher for public comment, please.
My name is Hope Fisher, and I'm a student, and my IEP has not been addressed to most of my teachers, and I don't feel like I'm getting the respect I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Lori Phillips to the podium, please.
Dear board members, Dr. Lent, Dr. O'Hara, and staff, my name is Lori. I live at 1609 East Jackson Street in Oswego. I have an 11-year-old different learner. Her name is Rowan, and she is a 5th grader at the ISP program in Churchill Elementary. I am speaking tonight to address the issue of the withdrawal of SB 308 from the Kendall County Cooperative. I have commented regarding this withdrawal before. And just like any other parent of a different learner, we have a lot at stake in this decision. We as parents of different learners are used to adversity, and we walk over fire to make sure our children are receiving the free, appropriate public education that they are entitled. Change is hard, especially when we as parents are so used to struggles that us and our children endure in the educational system, and many of our kiddos thrive on consistency. The resolution that extended the deadline for the withdrawal from July 1, 2016 instead of July 1, 2015 is a win-win for all parties involved. I am very pleased to see the board, Dr. Lunt and his staff listen to the parents involved and hope that there can be more transparency and open communication between all parties. I myself have attended 2 sessions of the parent focus group, and the parents involved have come up with some great concerns and comments of items that we are doing well. Although the concerns did outpace the items that we are doing well, which is to be expected, otherwise there would be no reason for change. The two facilitators were very open and really conveyed the feeling of wanting to know as much as they could from everyone involved in this process. But now the controversy of one of the facilitators maybe not being impartial has cast a shadow upon the process. Please do not let this shadow distract all parties involved. We all need to be on the same page for this process to work effectively. After weathering other communication snafus, I urge the board to meet this issue head on and do whatever needed to have open transparency and real open communication with parents in developing this delivery model for special education in SB 308. This process is far-reaching, not only for our children, but also for generations to come in SB 308. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Helen Kavlak.
My name is Helen Kavlak, and I live at 207 Angela Circle in Oswego. I'm a parent of a student with an IEP. How much is the rebranding of Oswego School District 308 truly going to cost? Nowhere in any board meeting notes has there been a request to change the district website or a breakdown of how much this will cost. Has the board considered how expensive this transition will be? How many man-hours and at what cost have already been devoted to changing all staff emails, updating staff websites, and programming hours needed to create the new website? The rollout started over the summer before the school board even had a chance to vote on whether to change the name and logo of the school district. Who authorized all this expense? The changes have already caused havoc with the school district staff attempting to input grades and eligibility. To what end have we rebranded? Does anyone seriously think that the name of our school district will have a real impact on the quality of education offered? If we keep telling ourselves we are world class, will we become world class? Once the transition is well underway, who will make sure that all the relevant information and links on the current website make it onto the new website? My big fear that this is just a great deal of data and information will vanish in the transition. Is this a convenient way to cause a giant shiny distraction? Will we be so distracted trying to find information that we don't notice how much this costs? Will we be so distracted we don't notice that no one asked permission to do this? Will we be so distracted that we don't notice that Dr. Went filed the paperwork requesting the co-op be dissolved before even asking the school board? Will we be so distracted that no one checks the timeline for this change keeps changing? Will we be so distracted we don't notice that when we ask Dr. Went Powell, he states, in October I will ask the Board of Education to amend the original petition. KCS&C member school district boards of education will have 90 days to vote to approve or disapprove. Following these votes, SB 308 will determine the next steps. I thought the board voted on a 2-year timeline to allow adequate time to make plans before committing to pulling out of the co-op. Before you vote on this, ask to see the preliminary plan on how much this transition will cost. It is still a fact that 80% of students with IEPs who take the standardized testing are already serviced by school district programs. If the goal is to really improve the education and test scores, the simplest, cheapest way is to fix the school district programs. So this must be about the money. If I were a betting person, I would bet that this pullout has a lot less to do with improving education for special needs students and a lot more to do with getting your hands on the IDEA grant money. What a large chunk of shiny money to make it look like the budget isn't so far out of whack. Who gets bonuses if the budget gap can be made to look smaller once the grant money is taken? Be aware the grants come with very specific spending requirements. It simply won't do to shift the funding currently in place for special ed to other parts of the budget and replace with the grant money. The grants don't work that way. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul. As a concerned parent, I will be asking the Illinois State Board of Education to very closely monitor how special ed is funded throughout this process, to monitor or audit how the grant monies are allocated, to confirm students receive their education in compliance with their IEPs, confirm that classes that are supposed to be gen ed classes are de facto illegal special ed classes based on the sheer number of students with IEPs being placed in them. As a concerned board member, you need to see the plan. In order to dissolve the co-op, the governing board needs to show ISBE that dissolving the co-op will not have an adverse effect on any students in any of the districts. ISBE has a fiduciary duty to block the dissolution if this cannot be demonstrated with detailed plans. If only School District 308 pulls out, then School District 308 is on the line financially to ensure that none of the remaining districts suffer financially from 308's withdrawal. You must insist on seeing the plan before you commit to what may end up being a very large expense. The governing board must discuss this with all the member districts in an open manner. This cannot be a behind-the-doors closed deal on how to divide the spoils. This would violate the Illinois Open Meeting Act. We assured the parents in the district who voiced concern that the request in August for compliance. 90 days will not be sufficient for each school district to put together plans that will pass muster with the ISBE to dissolve the co-op. Do not be pressured to act on this until you've seen a real detailed plan for the dissolution or withdrawal. Ask how much this will really cost. Ask to see the board minutes on how other districts have voted. As a parent, I'm glad the district is asking for our input. I wonder if our input will have any effect, or is it just one
30 seconds.
distraction to keep us busy while you dismantle our children's education. Don't forget that if services to any student with an IEP suffer, parents like myself will vigorously object to ISBE. We will demand a full audit. There will be lawsuits and large fines. So where is the plan?
Thank you. Okay. Move on to comments and reports. Just want to remind the public and all those watching that November 17th is our open question and answer session for the board. We'll be here in Oswego East in the auditorium. The information will be on the website. I think it's already there, right? And I just want to, we don't get to say or talk about the IT group that often unless there's an issue. I just want to thank the people that put together the video streaming and provide all of the recordings and history of the board. So I want to thank you very much. You put a lot into prepping it and ending it, and it provides a lot of transparency, especially on nights like this where people can't get to the board meetings. So thank you very much. That's all I have. So I will open up to other board members for comments.
I have a comment. Sure. I just wanted to recognize Friday I was here at East actually for they did a 4.0 recognition at the pep rally that they had before the homecoming game on Friday night, and they recognized 168 kids who had 4.0 GPAs for last year, and they're going to be doing that again in the spring. But just wanted to recognize those kids for working so hard and maintaining that GPA.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, we'll move on to board committee report, finance.
Sure. Mr. O'Neill and I just wrapped up the finance committee meeting. We reviewed, and we've got a couple of comments that we're going to bring back to the board, and I'll address those now, specifically regarding the bylaws. One of the things we talked about is the new bylaws that we talked about. The board approved has a membership floor of 12, and we talked about using administration, and I think that's acceptable, but I want the board to think about that in counting towards the number of committee members. We also talked about because we have effectively a floor that basically says that an advisory committee cannot drop below 12. And we talked about what that means is effectively if you have a member resign, and that happens to be the 12th member of the committee, what we are proposing that the board consider is that those resignations not be accepted until a replacement member is named. Does that make sense? Because that will keep us at the new statutory limits. So I just want to bring that to everybody's attention, and I would request that each separate committee have a further discussion amongst themselves if they think that is appropriate. So that was one of the things that we talked about. Up for our review tonight, and I believe the rest of the committees are going to see this shortly, is some information from Maureen regarding setting specific rules about public comment within the committee. So as each committee operates now, I believe we're uniform in that we allow up to 3 minutes per individual. And the Finance Committee, it has been probably less than 2 or 3 of the meetings since we impaneled over 2 years ago where we've actually had anyone make a public comment. The suggestions from Maureen were that we set a limit of not to exceed 10 minutes because typically these committee meetings we're capped right at 2 hours or an hour and a half if we're meeting before the board meeting. And our committee felt that was okay. However, there might be some more discussion and thought around uniformity of the speaking time, right? So is it right now it's kind of up to the committee chairs to say it's going to be 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And one of our committee members said, well, if you have someone speaking on one comment and there is not time to hear from everybody, would the chair then request an opposition view, right? So we can get a little bit of a balanced comment. And we thought that was a good case. Again, we're trying to think ahead. We know right now not many people are making comments at these committee meetings, but we need to plan and prepare for these things. So these are things that we as a board need to talk about and see if we want to add language or if we want each committee co-chair to kind of set their own guidelines. Again, the rule per Open Meetings Act is simply that we provide time for public comment. It does not dictate the length of time or the number of people that can speak. But I think we should have uniformity across the committees. And we should be a little less arbitrary. So something to think about there. We went in and we jumped ahead and went and looked at the budget at a glance and our levy at a glance, which is an update on documents that we have seen as a board and the committee has seen, and I believe we have that information in board docs for tonight, so you'll be able to see that as well. And then we didn't have a lot of time. We're going to spend more time tonight at this meeting with an update on the audit, but we got a quick presentation from the auditors and board. We're going to hear more on this shortly. Greg, did I leave anything out?
A couple things that I think the board should think about that we will be advancing, and the auditors gave us a little some of their opinion, and Dr. O'Malley has shared some of his opinion with us on whether or not, and we're going to weigh the pros and cons, the district should consider moving from an accrual basis of accounting to a cash basis of accounting, which a number of school districts in the state of Illinois do. And the reason that we may want to do that, one is there may be some potential savings. There's definitely pros and cons on both sides, but I just want everybody to know what we're discussing, and if they have any issues, to go ahead and bring them forward and let us know, because we just want to look at this as an option. We're not saying we're going to do it. We just want to look at it because there are some advantages of going to a cash basis. One is this endless misunderstanding of the timing difference in the TAWs, and this is brought on by the fact that we have an accrual basis accounting system, and I think this would clear a lot of that up. And there's some cons that will come out too. There's some awards that we wouldn't be eligible for if we were to go to cash basis, and that's been good for the district to have that. So it's certainly something to consider. And so I just want, if anybody has anything that they want to share at the committee level, or if you just let Dr. O'Malley know what your concerns are with maybe a cash basis accounting system might be, then we'd like to hear from you so that we can consider this at the meeting. And then finally, one thing that we talked about that we're going to be discussing that the board was involved in a year ago was, and this is the first time School District 308 has ever done this, is we put together a 5-year projected financial plan for the district last year. It's the first time that's ever been done. Now that we've gone through a year, it's time for us to update that document because it's a rolling living document. We want a 5-year projection every year, so we are going to add the 5th year, and we're also going to evaluate how we did based on what we projected and what actually happened. We don't expect it to be perfect because we're just doing this for the first time, but we hope to learn where the variances arose, what created them, and incorporate that into our future projections and hopefully get our, so people have a comfort level with where the district's going. Previous to this, nobody ever really knew what the plan was, and now we have one. So I think that's good information. Dr. O'Malley's done a great job with that, and I just look forward to presenting you that information, or the committee, as soon as we get a handle on where we're at. But I just wanted everybody to know that we've been working on that, and I think it's a great step for our district. I think it gives a lot of comfort to people to be able to look at a plan and see where we're hoping to go. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The 5-year plan is fantastic. I know Dr. Maley's been doing a lot of groundwork to get there, so it's great that we started last year and we'll continue it. And I would ask that the review of the accrual to cash basis, we take our time and do the analysis right. This is a big, significant change in our accounting practices, and we have to make sure that we really think through everything. I know the committee will, but it's not something that we should expect as a board at the next meeting or 2 meetings later to vote on. This is going to be a long process of going through and figuring out all the benefits to the district. Yeah.
I could be, probably something that wouldn't happen for at least a year.
Right.
We should look at it and see if there's an advantage to us, and we may decide there isn't. But I know there are advantages, but they may not outweigh the disadvantages. So let's look at it.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions or comments for the Finance Committee? Then, Dr. Nguyen, I'll hand it to you.
I attended a meeting this morning that allowed us to hear for the first time a 5-year maintenance plan. I want to commend our staff. I think you're going to be very grateful for what we've been able to accomplish over the last few months. I know it's important to the board to have a long-term facility maintenance plan in place. I saw it for the first time this morning. Our architects working with our staff presented it. I'm really excited about it. I told our staff that for our draft that was presented to the superintendent, I felt like we were probably 80-85% there. A few tweaks here and there. We're ready to present. So I'll visit with Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Bauman offline, but at our November facilities committee meeting, this particular plan would be ready for presentation to our committee, if that would be a pleasure of you two. And then if so, we would be positioned to present the plan to the board in December. So it's a board goal. There's about a dozen board goals that are of my greatest interest, and one of those is the facility maintenance plan, and that's really good. So I wanted to report that out, congratulate those who were involved in the process. The enrollment for District 308 continues to come together. I'm going to reserve, Mr. President, my comments until we get to the tri-monthly financial reports. We've placed a report, an enrollment report, within that particular topic, and I'll reserve comments until that time. Halfway point of our first semester. Semester's moving along very quickly, and that brings us to 3 board meetings in October. One tonight, a work session planned for Wednesday, October 22, and on Wednesday, October 22, we're going to spend some time setting the stage for the next 12 to 24 months. I'll come back to that momentarily. We have a handout with you, or in front of you. And then on October 27, our regular board meeting is also going to mostly be in a work session style. Dennis Cheeseborough will be here facilitating the board in the draft number 6 of the strategic plan, the 2020 plan. We feel very good about our vision, our recommendations with our mission, core values, key district strategies, and our district's task force will be together board on that Monday morning on the 27th, and then with a work session style. We'll do about a 30-minute, no more 30-minute presentation, give you an opportunity to see in advance, give you an opportunity that evening to provide questions and direction to us. Our goal would be to have our 2020 strategic plan approved by the board before January 1. And so that gives us several board meetings to make that happen. Before I go to the list of priorities, I would like to congratulate the board on agreeing to help finance students who are interested in taking and passing the advanced placement assessment. To that end, districts around the state and in neighboring states have contacted the college board inquiring about how the school board in District 308 reached the point of placing advanced placement as one of your priorities, and then consequently moving forward with a great lead of helping kids to finance that assessment. The college board has invited District 308 to present at the superintendent's meeting on November 6th, and so I'm going to be reaching out to the board and asking you your opinion on what you felt was important, why AP is important, and what caused you to create, out of all the priorities that a school district our size could have, why did you believe advanced placement was important? And then consequently, what moved us to helping kids help them financially take and pass the assessment. So I congratulate you. I spoke with the vice president of the college board here in Illinois this afternoon, told him I was going to announce that today or tonight at our board meeting, and I can share with you this is not happening. What I just described is not happening in other districts. So congratulations. I believe there's going to be ample opportunities in the future for us to tell our story. And along with that, in our online learning, we may have to ask some of you to go on the road with us. The School District 308 priorities document is in front of you. Just a couple of minutes, I want to share a story with you. About a month ago, I shared with you that the district administrators, directors, assistant superintendents gathered with me. We meet every 2 weeks. And it became very clear to us that it's easy to be a director in our district and work in isolation. We have our projects, we have our routines, we have our work, and there isn't anyone that isn't busy. Everybody is busy. But I do believe that we have to be busy on the right work. And I also believe that great leadership means that we're on the same page, moving in the same direction. And so I know a lot of busy people. Unfortunately, they may be busy on the wrong priorities. In District 308, whether we agree with the priorities or not, the Board of Education has the opportunity to set in place how our administration works and what projects are important to the district. And so what I have prepared for you is the synopsis of placing our district administrators in a room and giving them an opportunity over several weeks to tell the superintendent what are the 5 projects that you or your department, in other words, Derek Berlin, you've got a whole transportation staff, you have Val in student services, you have a number of directors that have staff of different size and different responsibilities. We asked them, what are the 5 projects that you believe are the most important on your radar screen this school year? And obviously it's just humanistic to naturally go to those that are currently in the works. In this business, you have to be ready for anything to change by the hour, certainly by next month or the month after. There are some repeats on this sheet because it makes sense that there's crossover between directors and directors. So it might be easy for Mike, if you were a director and Brent was a director, it might be easy for you to name a similar project because it's natural for the 2 departments to be working in tandem. So you might see some repeats, but you're not going to see more than 10 or 12. And there are 118 priorities that were discovered that are actively being discussed and thought about and engaged in some level. I'm not an expert in time management, but I think I'm smart enough to know that no system can have 100 plus priorities. And so next Monday, our administrative team will begin to bring this down, and eventually we will place a timeline of it. But before, Mr. President, we do the timeline, we're going to ask the board to join in, and that's where Wednesday the 22nd comes. We'll have this list in front of you before that board meeting, and we're going to ask you to do something very similar. Now, we have pulled aside and noted two important areas, and I'm just going to give you a few examples. For example, number 14, student survey. The board would remember that we have a student survey in even numbers and an employee parent survey in odd numbers. So the student survey may not come up in this year's, in a written form of priorities, but we know that the board expects the student survey of our grades 6 through 12 to be administered in late fall, early winter, every other year. Number 20, dual credit. Well, we don't have dual credit written today in for example, my board-approved priorities, but we know dual credit from last year is an important emphasis by our board, and we are doing things every year to grow the dual credit program. Online courses, number 29, 39, the 5-year facility plan. The internal audit, number 40, would be considered a board-approved priority this year. That's actually written in my contract. The number 48, communications, website. We must not have communicated it well, but the website was a goal and a priority of the district, and that is why we continue to work on it. Our PLC, professional learning community. The board has an expectation to hear a report on how to implement the professional learning community next school year. And you can just go through number 71. There's your ACT score. 20. We just put 24 beside it. We all know what that means. 75. That looks familiar, right? Evaluation of the kindergarten program. World languages. You'll find those in there. But then you're going to find about 75 to 80 that are not listed as priorities, and they're extremely important to our district. We have to get them accomplished. What are those? Well, I've circled a few. Number 35, committees. I don't think we have a committee for committees, but we have a lot of committees. And so we try to monitor the number of committees and task forces. But you just heard me say we have a strategic planning task force. We have a committee for bullying and harassment. We have an actual board-approved priority from the last strategic plan that was created by Dr. Balo and his staff and board, approved in about 2007-8. The strategic plan was to go through 2012 on ensuring that there was a diversity committee and issues of hiring in minority staff. And that's one area that we pulled out of that strategic plan that we need to do, and we haven't done a good job of it. We need to implement it in the next 5-year plan. We have number 67, the principal evaluation. You can go through here. Look at number 84. I think we probably have a few people around the board table that understand the importance of the PART preparation. Gifted Ed Services, number 88 is a board priority. In fact, it's on the agenda tonight. You said that by middle of October, you wanted to hear that we have a Gifted Ed task force meeting to improve gifted education services. And then 95 is a big one. You know, we just put negotiations on there as number 95. We have 2 unions or associations whose contracts are up June 30th. And so that's an enormous amount of time. So I wanted you to just see it. And I'd love for you to send me a note or be thinking about it. But this is what the district administration, we're trying to come together and determine and decide, along with board-approved priorities today, those that are in place, where is it that we want to spend our resources and our time? We spend our resources and time on a lot of areas. Well, in fact, over 100. But we want to ensure that we're doing the work that this school board at this time in our district expects of the administration. This gives you a snapshot. I hope it's helpful. Did we leave anything off? there anything that we left off? So if you find something that we've spoken about and it's not on here, shoot an email to me. It may have been inadvertently left off, and we need to add it to the list. Again, you have I'll send you an email so you'll have the electronic version. But next Monday we'll meet with our administrative team. So if you have any input, please let us know. And I hope that encourages you on not only the quantity, but I hope the quality of work we're doing in the district. Dr. O'Malley would be upset if I didn't mention the show and tell tonight. I said every 2 weeks we would come for show and tell. And last 2 weeks ago, we had the whole GSA issue and $16.6 million, and we appreciate that message continuously being brought out. And tonight, it's the P card rebate growth, and I think about every 2 weeks we'll just bring a. If you want this, can we get this to the board, Dr. O'Malley, electronically? I think we did that last time. And Brian, could we get this on our website so that people want to download it, share it with their neighbors? This is a good story. And I think it shows that we're heading in the right direction in that area. Questions or anything that we need to know about at this time? Thank you.
Thank you. Consent agenda, please.
I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 4.1 minutes from September 22nd, 2014, regular board meeting open session.
Second.
Hey, did we ever get an answer to whether or not first and second grade bilingual are still combined?
I was tuned out. Allie, would you ask that question again?
So, 2 weeks ago, I asked if, for just clarification, I haven't gotten it yet, on first and second grade bilingual.
Maya?
Yes, my understanding is yes.
It is still combined. And do you know how many kids are in each one?
I'll get that breakdown for you.
Could you send that out to the entire board?
Sure. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mr. McDowell,
Aye.
Mrs. Paul,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Baumann, Mrs. Swanson, Mr. Walsh.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Information, FOIAs. Are there any questions for Dr. Wen on FOIA information? Okay. 6.2, financial statements. I believe there were some. Are there any questions for Dr. O'Malley on this? Okay. 6.3, tri-monthly financial reports.
Within the report, Mr. President and Board, we included a number of reports, and this is, Dr. O'Malley, what did we call this report so that we don't, did it have a different name before tonight?
This was a requirement that the board had bestowed upon the business department on a quarterly basis to show our financial position as well as the enrollment and to set forth with a goal of between 95% and 97% attendance at each of our attendance centers or our schools.
So what we did was we tried to capture several initiatives that the board was interested in into one package. And I would just call your attention. This is the head count report. It's dated September the 30th. And I'll be sharing these with you periodically. But you'll note that we have our enrollment over here summary. And then we have, of course, those students who are being served from Opportunity School to our goal. And our summary total number of students on September 30th was 18,030. And so right there about where we thought we were going to be. And the next report that you as a board will receive will be within the next couple of weeks, and that will be our projected enrollment from RSP and Associates. They come in and they update it, and we'll be sharing all of that information with you in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully it was informative.
Can we have on the head count report, is there a way to have a report on the number of classes by grade?
That's going to be a separate report, and Dr. Sparlin, we'll probably have that later this week. Correct. Yeah, later this week, I'm being told we'll have that one, and that will break down by a grade level. Grade level. So, for example, you'll know how many students are in third grade at Southbury,
in
all
each
across the
classroom.
district.
Right.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so you'll email that out to us then
Yes,
versus.
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. The other report that's in there that's pretty interesting is the cost savings projection, which ties into the 5-year plan because these show what's already there, and it keeps driving for more savings. It looks like this grand total of savings is $9.9 million over the 5 years through 2018. Those are already savings that we captured in 13, 14, and what we've captured based on our contracts going forward. So those are basically like annuities from a revenue stream side that we will be capturing those savings and did it the proper way by having them recognized in the current period that we're going to get those savings. So this is a great report. I know there's income or revenue, additional revenues that you create, which is really part of savings as well. So that totals $11.4 million. So congratulations on that.
I just want to make a kind of an observation, I think, about attendance as we look at that by school. And let the record state, I am not suggesting that this is priority number 119. I look at this data and knowing what I know about some of our standardized test scores across these schools, I wonder out loud, again, I'm not asking for anyone to do this, I'm just wondering out loud because it's looking like there is a correlation between attendance and test score. And I think that is a message that we as a board and we as a district need to make sure that we are repeating over and over again as we work to get attendance up, that it has a direct correlation on students' performance. And
Is it part of our principal evaluation plans too? I mean, honestly, you can't make kids come to school, but you could definitely do things to encourage it. But I don't know how you would put that on somebody's evaluation. I just wondered if we had.
Well, there are ways we can make kids come to school because we can go get them. And, I know Dr. O'Malley's talked about it, and Dr. Wentz talked about it in other districts, having an individual assigned to proactively go find, say, upper ed high school kids and give them a ride to school and find out why they're not there and let's get them in school. But it's also the educational process, which I know we're starting, and that is saying, hey, Mom and Dad, I know it's difficult and when we all get in the habit of scheduling orthodontics appointments and doctor's appointments and stuff during the day, but if you don't bring the kid back to school, we can't count them. And time out of the classroom is it can be made up. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but I'm saying there's a direct correlation here, and the more we can do to make sure everybody understands that, unless the kid really is sick, and of course we don't want them in school if they're sick, but if they're not sick, let's get them to school.
One thing I would be curious to know is, I think they've done a great job at increasing that number based on what I've seen so far, is how we compare, just so we know how we compare with the attendance records of, say, nearby districts, because I'm not sure, and I would be interested to see, because we've put a lot of, I think even one of Dr. Wentz's goals was, getting the attendance rate up, so I just want to know how we stack up against some of the.
Yeah, I mean, so anybody can do that. It's very simple. The state school report cards that are up on the state website have average daily attendance broken out by school. You can go to any district and look at it. I happen to be dialoguing with, actually in my professional career, is dialoguing with a customer of mine. She has a student at one of the magnets or restricted placement schools in Chicago public schools, one of the really nice high schools, and I went and looked because I was curious to see how do we stack up? How does 308 stack up? And I noticed that our high schools have higher average daily attendance than that particular school. And again, it's one of those magnet schools. It's not just a random high school. It's one that you have to apply and test and get into. And I thought that was a good thing, a thing to talk about. To say, hey, we're doing things better than even the best school here, and I'm sure we can find other examples everywhere. But again, that data is out there; it's easy to get to.
Right. Well, and of course, general state aid is tied to that number as well, and that's a big plus for our district. If we raise the attendance rate, we get more state aid. So, besides improving, which is very important, improving academic performance, we also financially can benefit. So, it's
But
good work.
this is not going to an orthodontic appointment. This is missing a certain percentage of your school day, correct?
To some extent, it just depends. So at the high school, maybe a certain percentage of your school day. At the elementary, it could be going to an orthodontic appointment or a doctor's appointment. But that's what we're seeing from the principals, and I know Val has done a fabulous job, Val Patterson, of letting or making our principals aware that when you do go or when you do have an appointment during the school day, that works against us when we're trying to calculate our average daily attendance. And so we're doing a better job of communicating what the issue is, and you can clearly see that there have been gains, some more than others.
The student has to be in this school for 5 hours, right, out of that day. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So, great. Thank you. There's no other questions. We can move on to the annual financial audit report. Dr. O'Malley.
Yeah, this is our auditing firm is McGlandry, and we have two representatives. We have Katie Berry, and we also have John George presenting on behalf. And I have to be very careful when I say Katie Berry because I can often get that confused. But nevertheless, they are here to present and answer questions that the Board of Education may have with respect to our comprehensive annual financial report that each one of you has at your seats. So, please, John.
Thank you. As Dr. O'Malley mentioned, my name is John George. I'm an audit partner with McGladry, and this is Katie Berry. Katie's a senior manager with McGladry, and we're here to present. We're going to cover a little bit. I'll talk about the team, myself, Katie, Adam Metz, the supervisor, is here on a day-to-day basis doing field work. We also have Saad Benwani as a senior associate underneath Adam, and then David Gustafson is an assistant underneath those two. So we had a big team here for quite a few weeks. Mm-hmm. It's a large audit, large engagement. But Katie's going to cover a little bit of the audit process and the financial highlights, and then I'll cover a couple of the other deliverables that we issued along with the audit. So as we go through those, please feel free to have any questions.
So as John mentioned, the audit process actually started back in May. The audit team was out for a week to do some preliminary testing. What we did during that week during May, we did test of controls over payroll, and we did test of controls over cash disbursements. We also performed walkthroughs of the significant transaction cycles, read through board minutes, performed preliminary analyticals, and other preliminary risk assessments. We came back for final field work for 3 weeks starting August 18th, and that's where we're kind of digging into the details. We're looking at a lot of invoices, we're looking at bank recs, we're pulling samples for other types of tests that we designed. So 3 weeks, used up a lot of Dr. O'Malley's staff in the business office. Appreciate their help with that. So what you have before you is the financial statements. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth right now, but I just want to walk through the components of it and some of the financial statement highlights. So we issued an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance on the financial statements. This is a comprehensive annual financial report. So what makes this a comprehensive annual financial report is it includes the transmittal letter, which is a good narrative read of the operational and economic outlook of the district. There's also org chart, statistical schedules that include debt capacity, revenue capacity, other financial information, demographical information. The basic financial statements is composed of 3 items: your government-wide financial statements, your fund financial statements, and then notes to the basic financial statements. So your government-wide financial statements are on a full accrual basis. So what that means is it's a broad picture of your financial picture. So it's including all of your long-term assets, so all of your capital assets. It includes all of your long-term liabilities. So you're seeing all of your general obligation bonds and all of your other post-employment benefit obligations and your IMRF pension obligation. So all of those are included on your government-wide financial statements. And just to go through, those are on pages 13, 14, and 15 of your financial statements. So just a few numbers to point out here. Revenues exceeded expenditures by $2.1 million on those government-wide financial statements. On page 15, if you were to compare this set of financial statements compared to your June 30th, 2013 financial statements, one of the significant changes that you would note would be the implementation of GASB 65. GASB 65 was required to be implemented by the district during the current year. And what that did, it redefines assets and liabilities for the district. So it introduced new categories to your financial statements. So on page 13, you can see a deferred outflow of resources that's new under GASB 65. On page 14, we have deferred inflows of resources. An example of that is now deferred property taxes. In previous years, that would have been reported under liabilities. So GASB 65 changed the formula from being assets equals liabilities plus net position. It changed it to assets plus deferred outflows of resources equals liabilities plus deferred inflows plus net position. So it's supposed to be clarifying things. Yeah.
Just moving things around on the balance sheet.
One other thing that it did is previously bond issuance costs were capitalized and amortized over the life of your bonds. Under GASB 65, now bond issuance costs are written off. They're shown as an expenditure during the year. So that actually restated your opening net position by about $4.2 million. Due to the
previous issuance costs that had been capitalized and amortized were written off in this fiscal year.
So did you pull all that back into the current period then, all of that as it was stretched out?
It was shown as an expense. The unamortized portion was shown as an expense in the period.
Can you give me that in layman's terms?
So when you issue bonds, there's an issuance cost associated with those bonds.
Right.
And that cost historically had been put on the balance sheet instead of expensed. And amortized, so a portion of that was expensed over the life of bond issue. With this pronouncement, the interpretation is that transaction really happened at the time of the bond issuance. So we're no longer saying we're going to get a benefit of that transaction over the course of the bonds. It was really the benefit of that transaction was when we issued the bonds. The cost associated with the bond issue. So we're expensing it. So we're taking, instead of that portion of that $4.2 million as expense every year, we took the whole thing in the current year. And going forward, anytime we issue bonds, we're going to expense that in the current year.
So we took that hit for all of that
Yes.
in this year.
Right. On the government-wide financial statements. So you remember, we have 2 sets of financials.
Yeah.
Government-wide financial statements, which include your capital assets and long-term debt, and that's what we hit the expense with. We wrote off that issuing cost. And then your fund financial statements do not include, those are the statements it's more in line with what we see on a monthly basis. Your educational fund, your O&M, your transportation on that, without capital assets and debt associated with it, those are all fund financial statements.
So by doing this, then although it's small over the time period, we're reducing that long-term obligation, right? So,
yeah,
we actually had to take that now. So when in 10 years, instead of our bond and interest being $36 million, it's, for example, $35.995, for example, right?
Your interest cost is going forward is going to be less on the
Right.
government-wide financials than
Right. So compounded would be better, right?
All right, and then can you give me an example of a deferred outflow of resources?
Yes, so your deferred outflow is also associated with your bond issuances. So previously, so you have a deferred loss on refunding. So that is when bonds were refunded, there is a calculation that shows the difference between what was refunded versus what was issued, and that is capitalized capitalize on your governmental activities.
And that's something that's going to extend over the life of that bond issue. That's why it's kept on here. So that wasn't GASB 25.
In GASB 65, that's what all of this is under. That's required, or is that that's a new requirement?
It's required under the full accrual government accounting standards board. If we were to go with the whole discussion of cash basis, under the cash basis accounting, that wouldn't have been really an issue. But as far as deferred inflows and deferred outflows, there's items that wouldn't be showing up on a non-cash basis.
So under cash basis, would you then, the district, have an opportunity to make that decision on how they wanted to recognize those expenses?
On a cash basis, you recognize it when you
Just that's it, right? You can't roll it in then. Okay.
The standards are much greater.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So on the fund financial statements, those start on pages 16, 17, and 18. So as John mentioned, those are typically what you would see on a monthly basis. They're broken out by major fund. So your general fund is comprised of your education fund, your O&M fund, and your working cash fund. Debt service meets the requirements to be considered a major fund. And your non-major governmental funds are composed of transportation, IMRF, and I'm missing one, capital projects. So the notes to the financial statements, it just goes through support for all of your debt and your capital assets on your government-wide. There's further disclosures on your claims payable, on additional GASB pronouncements, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. The next section of the financial report is required supplementary information. So those are statements that are required under GASB. So there's budget to actuals for your general fund. There's also schedules of funding progress for your IMRF and your OPEB plans. Those are on pages 44 through 47. And then on page 48 is your supplemental information. All of that information supports your fund financial statements. So it shows the roll-up of all of the accounts that make up the general fund. It shows the roll-up of all of your non-major funds as well. And then your debt service requirements and your property tax information. And then the last section of the financial report is your statistical schedules. So that's showing your debt capacity, revenue capacity, demographical information, and some other stat schedules that are in there. Any specific,
yeah, a lot of detail in the back of the report that rolls up into mentioning a lot of statistical information that's required for that certificate of excellence in financial reporting, the comprehensive annual financial report that the district has. Statistical sections are required to receive that certificate. The required supplementary information, and other supplemental information that's rolling up the fund is required by the district. So there's a couple components to it. It's obviously a very large document. A lot of time and effort going into putting it together, and a lot of management's effort at year-end to calculate these accruals and come up with these account balances that we test all of that. Any questions on the financials? I mean, it's a quick synopsis of 100-some pages.
Could you tell me where to find the debt capacity?
Debt limit?
It's on page 84. That's the legal debt limit.
We're on page 32 as well in the footnotes. It says either one. There's a debt schedule and there's a schedule on the debt, as Katie mentioned, and the footnote disclosure, the second paragraph on page 32 is the legal debt limitation. That's calculated as a percentage of the district's equalized assessed valuation.
Right.
And so your allowed your debt limit is $147 million, and your margin reports due on to be filed by October 15th. We filed that report. Nothing really to note there. Information tied back to the audit. Other documents that we issued, we do issue a board report. It's our statement on auditing standard 114, requires that we communicate certain items to the board. Relative to how we perform the audit and what standards we followed, whether or not we had any adjustments, audit adjustments during our audit process, any adjustments that we agree with management not to post. All that information is disclosed in the report to the board. Whether we had any disagreements, if we had any disagreements, we did not, but they were disclosed in that report. Significant issues or difficulties, the item of GASB 65 is covered in that report. We also have in that report the representation that management provides to us. Obviously, throughout the course of the audit, we have a lot of representation regarding the estimates and financial information that's provided to us that management makes. So that's a copy of that letter is in the report. We also list out any control issues or any suggestions that we've made as far as from a control standpoint. That's listed in the report. And then the last report is our SHITO audit report, and that's a report where we test the district's expenditures of federal aid. So federal grant dollars that come in, we're required based on a calculation of the number of the dollar amount of total expenditures and the size of certain programs. We have to test certain expenditures. This year we were required to test the child nutrition program. That made up of a little bit over 50% of the total federal dollars that were spending. And then we tested that program. We had one finding that we reported, and management followed up with a corrective action plan, and that as well as being filed with the State Board of Education, as well as the Federal Clearinghouse. So there's a separate report that's filed with the Federal Clearinghouse on that.
What was that?
What was that?
What was the
finding?
The finding related to the verification of the application.
So each October, there's a verification process where, I don't recall often what the system is, but you go in and you have to recalculate a certain number of reduced and free lunch applications.
Yeah, it's really small.
Yeah.
So instead of 20, it was 19. So it wasn't a significant issue, but it's an issue that's required.
I just want to make sure I understand the legal debt limitation that you guys had on page 85, where it says the 221 million of bonds issued. I believe that was from the $450 million referendum. There was some legislation that allowed the district to exceed its debt limit. So the debt prior to that is subject to the 13.8%. And any debt issued now that the $450 million referendum's expired, if a new referendum were to come up, would either be subject to the 13.8 or would require more legislative approval. Is that correct?
Okay, I have one
Not that
more.
we're planning on issuing any more debt. I just want to. There's a lot of people watching, but
I just want
for that question to come from you.
what would have to happen?
No, I know. That's why I asked that. It shows that our capacity is starting to increase, which is good.
So page 62, where it talks about principal and interest, total outstanding debt, that's our buildings. So I'm looking at the interest, and it's fluctuating a lot between 2022, 2023. 2028 is a big year.
Based on the type of bonds, I think, too.
So is that what bonds are retiring at what time?
This is a retirement schedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
This shows bonds that are retiring each year, principal and interest.
So sometimes we pay more interest on bonds that are retiring. Why does it jump up?
Well, it depends on if you have, you do pay interest rates. Differently, if you go back, you see the bonds that relate to which year. So that year you're looking at 23. There's probably a significant bond issue that falls off in 23. It's the series 2008 capital appreciation bond. So that bond was built with a smaller payment in
think back, Ally, we had so many, I think you have a number of series of bonds, and each series may have differences in how they were structured. And then when you structure new series on old series, they may actually have the same expiration date.
Right, but if we choose not to restructure these and to pay these, this is going to directly affect taxes.
Oh, unequivocally. I mean, in 2017, you have another option where your bonds are callable, but that you could refinance at a lesser rate, which has been the practice in this district for many, many years. And that can have a huge effect on what you're seeing there right now.
Just look at 22.
Yeah, remind me to be off the board in 2028.
On page 80, which is a layout of our principal property tax payers.
Page 80?
Page 80. On our final, the last 7 or 8 property owners, are those values based on a 2005 evaluation?
On June 30, 2006? Oh, yes.
So we're saying, so Target, Home Depot, they haven't been reassessed since 2006?
They've been reassessed, but they didn't reach the top 10 in fiscal year 14.
Yeah, because if you look at the first...
like Target, their EAV is more than 2.8 right now.
No, well, if you look at if you go to the column that's to the right, June 30th, 2006, Caterpillar's your first largest. Inland Western Oswego is your second largest. Then you have GNI, the 7th Farmington Lakes, LLC. That's your third. And then if you add the ones at the bottom, those are the highest ones at that particular time. Well, if you fast forward to 2014, we're only required to have the top 10 listed, and that's exactly what we did. So we're not going to go out and look for the assessments on those properties. There's no need to do it. That's not the expectation of the comprehensive annual financial report.
That makes sense. Matt?
No more questions, right?
No, that's
Hey,
fine.
when they're dashed, that just means they weren't there in 2006, right?
Right,
Meyer?
exactly. So Target, we're saying we're listing the top 10
At the time.
At the time.
at the time. So in 2014. So Target right now doesn't even fit in our top 10.
It could be lesser, yeah. I mean, what really isn't shown in this report that we just started doing when I came here is challenging individuals that were challenging their taxes at the I want to call it the circuit court, but that's not the correct term. They got the PTAB, Property Tax Appeals Board, and the circuit court. But you'll have Walgreens, you'll have Target, a number of these companies have the resources to challenge their EAV, and so they're able to drive it down greater because you can either take them to court and you can fight them, which will cost even more money on the money that you have, or you can negotiate for a lesser value, which we've been doing. And you have to pick and choose because there's a threshold at which you're able to acquire savings. So it's highly likely that those corporations that have really good resources are able to drive that down through the PTAB or appeals process. Because if you look at Caliber, to your point, the Caterpillar has literally stayed constant or flat. That's because it's highly likely that they're challenging it, and it's very difficult to win when you do take them to court. So you have to find a balance. And it does affect, by the way, that does affect the homeowner. So we've been stepping in to intervene on behalf of the homeowners as a taxing body to keep it more stable.
Any other questions?
Do you have more, Matt?
Thank you.
Again, thank you for having us. Thank you to management and team for all the help in getting. It's a lot of work to get the audit done. And as the finance committee meets, if we're more than happy to come in and speak to you regarding cash neutral districts and the pros and cons to that.
We might ask you to come, and it won't be right away, but somewhere down the line we might ask for some opinions on the impact.
And they come back to the full board, I would suspect, right? Yeah. Thank you very much for all your work. Thank you. Okay, 6.5, Gifted Education Program Recommendations.
One of the board's goals is to ensure that we had a task force in place and that we had preliminary work by this time of the school year set out forth for the district. I've asked Dr. Miner to set the stage for what has been accomplished and the next steps, so the board is aware that this goal is being met throughout this school year. This is an update on the board goal, gifted education.
So just to give some just foundational information, the initial audit of gifted services had been presented last February by Dr. Carolyn Callahan to the board, wherein she noted accommodations, problems, issues, and concerns and recommendations for consideration. She spoke about how our model had been a 70s and 80s model, and that as we, given the board's direction, we could potentially, within 2 years, have a solid and well-defined program, given their direction to go forward. That was the direction as a result of the goal that was given, and therefore we proceeded to form a task force. And I want to publicly acknowledge several members of our task force, if you could please stand up, who were part of this process. Certainly, and we have Mike Mitchinson here as the elementary principal representative. We also have Dominique Riquibi, who had been here. She had snuck out. Our new PACE president, Terry Schilberg, had been part of the process. Our community member, Katrina Boatwright, had been here previously, and as well as our Teaching and Learning Advisory Committee member, Stephanie DeSico, and Paul Roberts, a Gen Ed high school teacher. So I want to personally thank them for all the hard work they had done, and you'll hear more about what that involved in just a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
The layout of the task force membership was recommended by Dr. Callahan for specific reasons. These 15 individuals were supposed to be representative of a greater set of constituents, and so they were tasked to capture the work that we had done in groups and take it back and get feedback. They also had some homework that they needed to do, so when they were asked in August to be part of it, we appreciate their stepping up to the plate. On September 12th and 13th, we had a day-and-a-half workshop, which was the beginning of framing out our philosophy and definition statements. We looked at what some other districts had. We tapped the research-based best practices through the readings that we had, and the entire group had the opportunity to share their thoughts. The result was a draft of a synthesized statement that then went out to each of the constituent stakeholder groups to get feedback from. After 2 weeks' time, we then pulled a team together on September 29th, where the stakeholder feedback was discussed by the task force and tightened up as far as a revised philosophy. We then went again out to these representative task force groups, and for example, I had attended an EPIC meeting to share where we were in the draft, pose some questions, work to embed some responses. There also was a Google Doc that was put together to which people could contribute information that was synthesized. At October 14th, district administration had met together, and we Skyped in with Dr. Callahan from the University of Virginia to talk through the feedback and to make sure that what we had talked about was representative of the team, as well as I couldn't even guess how many people were tapped, from principals, teachers, either AT or Gen Ed. I know that Terry had sent something out to the PACE membership to communicate, and so we had the opportunity to get much input. So here's what we had come up with, and I'm just going to read the philosophy and then read forth the definition. with noting that every single word meant something. So for the sake of the people who can't see it, this is what we came up with. In School District 308, we are committed to the development of the whole child and believe that gifted students who come from all socioeconomic, cultural, ethnic backgrounds, as well as amongst special education students and English language learners, must be engaged in challenges and opportunities both within the classroom and outside the traditional setting that cultivate growth in their areas of identified giftedness, whether in the intellectual and/or artistic areas. With teachers and administrators working in concert with families and communities, we expect that these students will learn the content, skills, and dispositions that will allow them to become leaders in their areas of giftedness, demonstrate remarkable creativity, become effective communicators, and exhibit notable productivity as a contributing member of society at the local, regional, national, and global levels. Similarly, within the definition, you'll see some common themes in this as well. Gifted students in School District 308 demonstrate exceptional ability or high potential in intellectual and artistic areas and require services or learning experiences not provided in general education programming in order to fully realize their potential. These students can be found across all socioeconomic, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds, and also among special education students and English language learners. So at that point in time, I'm just going to stop, see if there's any questions or with regard to the verbiage, because what will then follow is at the next board meeting, if this meets your approval, this would then drive where we would then begin looking at identification and then also program definition that we would work with Dr. Callahan to frame out something for the next 2 to 3 years.
Can I ask a lawyering question? So where it says, and require services or learning experiences not provided in general ed. So if we put the word may require services, does that legally change that definition? Because when I read this, I think it means two different things if I put a may in front. So let me go. So is this just a definition just for our sake, or is this some kind of legally binding definition? Whereas if I have a kid who I decide tests into, so now I am required to provide services, not that I don't want to, I'm just asking the difference in definitions. Or if I put may require services, because quite frankly that definition could apply to a lot of different things, including dual language, including ELPs, including special ed.
With the exception of the first two words, which is defined as gifted students in this particular category.
Right. But I mean, I see where you're going with it. I'm just asking if legally, if we adopt this definition and move forward with it, we now legally have to provide any kid that tests into this service. I don't know. Can mom or dad pull them out of it? Or is it not a legally binding definition?
This is not a legal definition. This is a definition identified by this task force.
Right. Okay.
One piece in our conversation, though, is if it's something that's that the board would seek to approve, I think this kind of ties into what was previously mentioned. What are we going to do to, are we going to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak? And how do we define what those services are? Because then that might have implications for FTE. That might have implications for how we do school. And I think that's why making a review of this and giving you time to digest it, it does have implications for what our next steps would be going forward, whether it be identification or for staffing or for program development.
but I just, like, as I recall it, our general conversation around the hiring of FTEs for special ed, the reason we held off on it was because the curriculum wasn't ready yet. So I mean, are we assuming now going forward that we're going to fix the curriculum?
Part of what Dr. Callahan would provide, and this is on the backside of your Phase 3 plan, she would provide a phased-in approach. And certainly, looking at the service delivery model, presenting that to administration, sharing that certainly with Dr. Wendt and sharing with you, that is also something that, as we go every step of the way, doesn't meet with our philosophy, doesn't meet with our definition, doesn't meet with our funding stream, and doesn't meet with how we want to phase in gifted education services for our students.
Or can I just say what bothers me about that is that we have to hire somebody, we have to bring somebody in to phase in our special ed. Well, I mean, you're
gifted in.
The gifted, not gifted. I'm sorry. Gifted. My head's in a different place. So you have Dr. Callahan.
She's helping us create programming for the district. She's not writing it. She's facilitating it. And if you want the best program that we can get for students, then we wanted to use what we considered one of the best people to help us. And I consider that money well spent.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. It just frustrates me that we have to look outside when we have pretty talented individuals inside as well. That's my frustration.
I can understand that. Hopefully we'll be able to work through it.
Are there other questions?
Anything else, Dr. Minor, on next steps?
No, just I would refer you, rather than going through verbatim, I'll refer you to Phase 3 so you can see how this will progress. And every step along the way, there is a wait and get feedback, wait and get feedback, wait and get feedback. So that's where your feedback will be very valuable to the process.
We'll be back in a few months to give you another update. Give this some thought over the next couple of weeks, and if possible, we'll ask the board to approve it in 2 weeks, so it sets the stage for additional work by that outstanding group of people.
Oh, well, let me clarify then. So you want us to approve which part?
The definition and the philosophy. It's a vision for us to create a program, and what we'd do is come back in probably not January, but likely February, March, and then we would give you the particulars of how that program will look throughout the district. We would have cost, we'd have the number of staff, we'd have all of the things that need to take place. I mean, there's a whole gamut of possibilities that fall into potential gifted ed programming. I mean, I have my likes and thoughts. I'm sure everyone else does. We'll put these people together, and I'm 100% confident they're going to come with what we need in this system. I know what we currently have is not what we need, so I'm expecting these fine people to come in and with the help of all those folks that you mentioned, plus our base group, I think we're heading in the right direction. This is an exciting time. This has been a long time coming. First parent meeting I had in this district was in October 2012. It was PACE, and it was in this room, and it was standing room only. And it was a 4-hour meeting, and there were some really rough stories told. It's taken us a while to get to this point, and we had to find out what we were doing well, what we weren't doing well, and that audit that was presented was not all that friendly and favorable to 308, and so it's just going to take a while to sort through. There are a lot of good people doing good things, but it goes right back to what I said earlier. We can be really busy, but if we're not busy on the right priorities, we're not moving the district forward. And quite frankly, we're not where we need to be with gifted education. We have a lot of work to do, and part of that is to know where we're going.
So can I ask one more question? So when we talk gifted ed in the elementary and junior high levels, are we assuming that the vertical articulation of that is AP?
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why you don't see grade levels on here was we didn't want to bookend ourselves. This allows for the work at the K2 level. This also, it talks about AP. That might not be enough for those students who are gifted. So while AP may meet some students' needs, we had the opportunity to do a little brainstorming and think out of the box for what if that's not good enough? What if we have students who are doing distance learning with schools like Northwestern? Or what if we allow research opportunities for our students who are way above an AP physics class? So I think that's why we incurred one of the phraseology of both within the classroom and outside the traditional setting to cultivate growth in their areas of giftedness.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll move on. Action item. Thank you, Dr.
I make a motion to authorize the payment of bills in the amount of $21,742,282.71 as presented.
Second.
Have a roll call. Yeah.
Yeah. Any comments?
You have a
Mr.
question?
Baumann, are you good? Well, I just, in going through it, and someone had mentioned before about spending $2,000 on a SD 308. There's a couple of bills in here for the same guy for over $6,000. Is that still?
Which?
Well, is that
bill?
still?
She's referring to Jim Lingenfelter, which I had questioned Dr. O'Malley. I had sent him about a dozen items, which he got back to me pretty quickly on. Mr. Lingenfelter billed the district over $6,100, and the explanation was that it was graphic design and layout. I think the clarification is this including the $2,500 that was spent on the logo, or are we going beyond the scope of that into a different realm? And hopefully it's not, I mean that doesn't fall into this stuff.
I know.
No.
Quite possibly it may fall into this. So when we do a lot of these designs, I'm not saying that this is costly, but we may actually have some input. There are several of these that we've done during the course of the year. So he may assist us on particular layouts and designs as we're perfecting our skills and informing the community of the various items that we have.
Superintendent's annual report, anything that might go public.
But I mean, I get that, but we hired a guy for that.
I would disagree with this. I think that you're asking about a person who might, a position that might fulfill 6 or 7 different positions. I had this conversation with the superintendent this last week in Naperville 2 or 3, with 3 times the number of people in the communications department, same size school district. I think we have to be careful assuming one position fulfills 5 or 6 different roles. I think there's marketing, I think there's public relations, I think there's website design, I think there's webmaster, I think there are all of these things. And so we have a people that have a set of skills, but every once in a while you're going to find that skill is there's more that's needed. And so it's also a budgeted amount. I don't believe any director has gone over budget. So
And it's cheaper than hiring somebody.
Yeah.
Dollar to get the job done. Website, board will, it's not free.
Are there other questions?
Well, we did ask once before to get the, we were also talking earlier about some of the bills. Some of these get paid back, especially a lot of the athletic stuff.
Oh yeah, that's reimbursement. A lot of the schools, the high schools in particular, may not be able to afford or may not be able to pay in advance, so they're able to use the district as a means to pay back, and they're able to negotiate rates at the building level. We've been doing that for years.
Right, but at some point on here, can we put these get paid back by the buildings?
Absolutely.
Output?
You know that's a good point. What we may do is I think we provided to the board a report that broke all of those items out, and we'd be more than happy to do so in the future. if that's a request.
We just need to know, Mr. President, what is the board's request versus the board, an individual board member's request. That's what we need to know. If the board wants me, this is the.
So the question is, am I the only one who wants to know what we get reimbursed for?
I'd be interested in that.
It's a valid request. Like when you see OHS boys for a coach, you can see the coding on it in the invoice, and then a simple R next to it, stating that we're going to get reimbursed, or travel expenses for a coach, meal expenses for a coach, things of that nature.
Some of these expenses won't be reimbursed for a period of time. So
But if we anticipate,
you track those reimbursements, right, somehow?
yeah.
Right? So would the board be satisfied with an annual report of reimbursements, a quarterly report, a semi-annual report? I mean, because if you're breaking through every invoice, what's going to be reimbursable and not on a monthly basis? There's so many.
But if you're putting together, I'm sure it's a keystroke on OHS boys, a coach. Is a coach always going to be a reimbursable item?
Could be. If the coach is taking the athletes to an event, and it could be, there's a lot of tournaments. There's track tournaments, volleyball tournaments, basketball tournaments. Football, you don't see it in football. It's not as prevalent. But if you have tournaments and the coach is there for a day, there's no better chaperone than having the coach. And so that's the first thing that I'm most concerned with. And the second thing is I believe there's policies that actually give meal reimbursements to your coaches when they're when they're overseeing the students.
We're not questioning. Is there just a way to mark on here that these are reimbursable, like when we buy uniforms or when we buy?
Report.
Well, yeah, we could talk about this at the work session too. What the board would be satisfied on a regular basis.
I know in the past that the previous board wanted a report. We created a report.
Yeah, and it'll give you a little bit of time to see what's really involved in putting ours on the pay. Where on different line items, for example. It'll give you some time to come back with some thoughts.
Yeah, I brought up this topic somewhat along these lines about the purchasing agent that we hired, and that I personally had hoped to see purchasing centralized a little better, because I saw the long list of people that are able to charge on account for the district, and I still hope to see us centralized purchasing because it makes sense, but
there's going to be central.
We're getting closer.
But I think you had
I'm not saying we're not on that path. I think it's a weakness of internal control of an organization this large.
I agree.
To have too many people charging on your account, and I'd just like to see that.
I think the cards were like 352 down to 299. I remember that chart. So we're going in the right direction. With any complex organization, you're going to have either a centralized or decentralized procurement process or a hybrid thereof. And I think that's what we somewhat have now.
Yeah.
As long as we have tight controls, a hybrid model I'm not advocating anything at this point, but a hybrid model may make sense.
This
it
is
all
not
depends.
a criticism of
the
district. I'm just making an observation. I know we've hired a person. Maybe we're on the right track.
Yeah.
I hope we are. To look at those bills in a vacuum, it looks, just your general sense is that this is a lot of people with the ability to charge an account. And maybe that's what we have to do. I'm not saying it's not. I just would like to see it tightened up as much as possible and centralized in the hands of fewer and fewer people, where people have to make requisition requests rather than actually make the report. I think that works better. Okay, thank you. All right.
That's excellent.
Okay, if we have no other questions.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill?
Aye.
Mr. McDowell?
Aye.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson? Mrs. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye, motion carries 7-0. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
I make a motion to enter closed session under Statute 5 ILCS 120/2C1, the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of a public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of a public body or against legal counsel for a public body to determine its validity.
Before I second this, I would ask, is this necessary?
Yes.
All right, second.
Mr. McDowell?
Aye.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson? Mrs. Paul?
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill? Mr. Walsh?
Aye, motion carries 7-0. We're in closed session.